You don't have anything that cheers.
Oh, I do. Cheers my Disney cup with all my Disney stickers.
Lindsay, yeah, I see the bunny on there. It's pretty dope.
Yeah, there's Judy.
I like Judy Hopps.
Yeah. We got
not Nick. Nick's not on there.
No, this is a women's empowerment.
Oh, right
cup.
on. Yeah, it goes with the theme. Lindsay, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, glad to be here.
9 years in law enforcement. Mm-hmm. Before that, you were working in the service industry. Mm-hmm. Got 10, like a decade in that.
Yes.
Law enforcement's pretty much the same way.
Yes, there's a definite skill set was very easy transition. Yeah, and the patience. Yeah, that was money.
Yeah. Not throw stuff back at the customers and stuff.
Yeah, you got to say it with a smile.
Yeah. So what led you from the transition from that industry into law enforcement? And this all happened in Colorado?
Yes. Yeah. So I grew up here in Colorado. Grew up in Aurora. That's where I was. Started in high school in that restaurant and worked with the same person. So I had that consistency and leadership and direction. Finally kind of got to my early 20s and early to mid 20s and really started thinking, what are you doing? Like, where is this heading? And the place where I worked was very much geared towards specializing people in that industry and putting them on career paths within the company. Okay. So I kind of came to a crossroads of, is this what I'm going to do? And am I going to follow this? Like, because it's to do that's really strenuous. Like, it's to actually start those steps and do that at the corporate level. It's
right, because there's classes you have to go to and stuff.
Yeah, they put you through your paces. And so having heard other people's experiences with doing that, I was like, God, I don't know if that's what I really want to put myself through and if this is really worth it. And took a step back and I was like, what do I care about? Like, what is this what I'm meant to do? Am I just good at it? And if I were to leave it, what is calling me? Like, where am I being pushed to? Sure. And the restaurant where we worked was near Aurora PD's District 2, up at the Civic Center building. Mm-hmm. So we had, Aurora PD cops in there all the time, at least upwards of 20, 30, 40 a day. And after the Aurora Theater shooting, kind of that connection that we felt and hearing the one-on-one stories of what they had to do in that and like kind of seeing the humanization of them even more, all kind of coincided and crossed. And you're
talking about seeing the person behind the uniform. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. But knowing what they as people had to do, because we saw them as people already, and then realizing what that actually meant, kind of keyed something off, and then timing lay down right at this crossroads that I was at with my job already. And so just took a leap of faith and started looking into how do you become a cop? What does that even mean? Right. Because it's not mainstream information that's out there. So talked with some of them, and my first thought was, well, do dispatch, like dip your toe in and see what is this. And talk to some of the guys, and they're, you can do sit-alongs in dispatch, where you can like go sit up there and listen to them, and had reached out to dispatch supervisor and never heard back from them. I'm like, okay, well, that's not to be, because no one wants to get back to me about how to even to do that. So then did more research about getting into becoming a cop and looking up hiring requirements, and because I don't have a college degree, so I was really hesitant or worried that would inhibit me from pursuing that, and realized that that's not a requirement in most Colorado departments, and was excited by that, and thought, what do I need to do for me as a person and at this point in my life? And a lot of it was physical training. I had never really been a very physical person or like athletic person, and so did a lot of physical training. I had never shot a gun before, to have my neighbor go out and take me shooting. So
and this is all before
mm-hmm.
getting in,
mm-hmm.
before you even started pen to paper filling out the applications.
Yeah, because I didn't want
to prepping yourself.
Because I didn't want to waste my time or anyone else's time and make this big shift and commitment into what it is to become a cop, mm-hmm. and get into it and be like, I'm scared of guns. And
so is what it is to become a cop.
Mm-hmm.
Then was that was your perception then? What is it now? Is it the same
for myself or others?
We'll focus on you.
I think I would go about it in the same methodical way of kind of going through, and I still kind of am, of what parts of me do I need to work on to fulfill that image in my mind of that overall idea, and then me of that idea.
Like fitting in that picture.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So went through all those steps and then started applying, and took quite a while to finally get into the field. I tried with Aurora and took them a year to tell me no. So that was fun.
What year was this?
2013.
So it was still a good place to work.
Yeah. It was before it became the Aurora it is now. But it was tough because I was still at the, working at the restaurant, and my boss at the time, God bless her, was like, okay, I'll stick it out with you. And she held over for that year, and we get to the end of that year, and she's like, I can't stay in limbo. I have to move my business forward. So that was a tough transition for me to try to figure out what to do and still pursue that dream, but take care of myself. And actually went through the Community College of Aurora. They offer a Citizen Academy where essentially you pay for college courses, but it's law enforcement academies, and you can get your accreditation through that. So
you can go through post through that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so there's many of those across the state.
So you self-sponsored.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Essentially, yeah. So that's how I got my post certification. So went through the 5-month or 6-month, no 5-month, 5-month academy. Got my post cert in May of 2015 and got hired in July of 2015.
So was it very physically demanding as you were anticipating when you self-sponsored?
Not in that one, because it was a private
More class.
yeah, and there were elements of it of being the paramilitary steps and processes, but we were private citizens paying. Most of us were private citizens paying to be there. So there was only so much that they could do because it was a community college. You know, they go through the government regimented topics, but they can't enforce government regimented protocol.
They want your money.
Yes.
They don't want you to quit.
Right.
Yeah.
So yes and no, doing the arrest control and ground tactics, and part of it was a physical fitness program as well. But I had already kind of done some of that myself.
The prep work.
Yeah. So I was in the physical state to do it, but it was things that I had never done before, especially with like the ground tactic and arrest control stuff. So that was daunting at first, but we had 3 old school Aurora PD cops who were, trained with Bob Koga, and we called them the 3 senseis because they were still in the 70s, 80s, and 90s in their minds.
Yeah.
But it was great to have them as instructors because they gave a lot of that mindset information. They gave a lot of those minor tips and hints along the way that they had done for decades and helped them survive and get to where they were. And so that was really helpful to have as instructors too.
So day 1 of the academy, you go in, you're getting all this inundation of information. Was it more than you were anticipating, less than you were anticipating?
Because I had done all the pre-research, it was more just education for me at that point. It was about, this is how you do this. Oh, it's about learning the laws. It's about understanding when you can take action, not take action, how you do that, the internal criminal process or the court process and those kind of things. And again, going through the academy that I did, I was very fortunate with the instructors we had. I mean, the way that I learned the Colorado revised statutes, the laws, we had a former Arapahoe County homicide DA was teaching us. And then the way that we learned priority investigations, so sex assaults, murder investigations, assaults with deadly weapons, was her husband, who was an Aurora homicide detective for 30 years. So we had these... You're tapping into so much knowledge right there. Right, and that's who was instructing us. So when I'm learning how to read laws, I have this amazing, incredible woman she prosecuted those cases. And so they were able to give us not only that knowledge base that they had done for decades, but also real world examples of how this is how we did this. So, and they were... Because it was private, that was something that they on their own time were contracted, and it was additional income for them. But we had the fortunate side of that, we had these great instructors who had tapped into that field for themselves to get, an additional income. But that's how I got that instruction and started out. So when you were trying to do the research to get into police work and figure out what it was all about, did you never reach out to just a police officer and say like, hey, I want to be like you? I did. Yeah. So that, again, the connection with the Aurora guys that were coming in, that's why I tried with them first. Cause and especially going up in Aurora, learned a lot about crime in Aurora and kind of walked an interesting path before getting into law enforcement. But, and so I did. I mean, I went on tons of ride-alongs, and went in different shifts and stuff. And one of the guys that I would go on ride-alongs with, he's still one of my best friends. He is a big brother to me. And the reason I went to CCA is that's where he got his post. And so when Aurora told me no, he was one of the people I did turn to and said, I need direction on this. Like, how do I do this? And, so yeah, I definitely, and having that once I realized what I could do, and I had done those paces of, like I said, doing the physical fitness, shooting a gun, educating on how do you get hired. I started going on rides and being in those things, and I was jazzed. I was like, oh yeah, I can do this. Yeah, I got it. Someone get me out here. And then continue to do that through that year process of the with Aurora taking that long, and then again even still through the academy when I would go out on those rides, and then I started actually applying to places at the end of the academy to continue to do those ride-alongs and see different departments, and again still making sure that I was in that mindset of like, yeah, this is where I'm at, this is where I want to be.
So you got I'll ask you 2 questions here. You got Judy Hopps on your cup, so we'll go with Judy Hopps. Yeah. You run across we'll say an 8-year-old girl, and she rips off her clothes like a Superman, and then poof, she's got police uniform underneath. Yeah. She says she wants to go to Zootopia and become a police officer.
Yeah. She wants to make the world a better place, like Judy.
Yeah, that's such a good movie.
That's what she says.
Side tangent. But you come across this young girl. What do you tell that girl as far as with all your experience? And we'll get into your experience going forward. But with everything that you know now, what do you tell that 8-year-old girl that wants to make the world a better place, save people, and become a police officer? And then we'll jump. That's question number 1, and then number 2, you come across the 20-year-old. That's looking, for the same direction. So what do you say to the 8-year-old first?
For the 8-year-old, I say, don't give up. Don't give up on that little bit of you that part of you that's like, oh, I want to do this and I like it. Cause that's that initial spark. That's that initial hope of it. And then seeing what it is, or again, that like I talked initially about like, what is that idea that we as individuals that do get into this field of like what that cop image is. That has already manifested in that little 8-year-old. They already see what that can be, and they already see that image is connecting with something inside themselves. And so they've just manifested. So don't give up on that. Hold on to it, and don't let others tell you that that's silly or you should do something else, and that's wrong or any of those negative things, because that's already keyed something off in you. Those things are already manifested. Well,
and it's also, and this kind of the theme of this is females in law enforcement. Yeah. Right. And it's a male dominated profession. It's changing a little bit after the 90s, but still significantly male dominated, especially in management. So that's why the curiosity, that's why I said a little girl, and the desire to fit into an image that they have in their mind, because they don't know.
They don't see gender.
Right.
They don't see that. They don't see gender. They see a hero. They see someone that they can look up to. They see that's someone that they can trust. And that's not any different for men or women when we get older and actually make the substantial steps to get into the profession. We still all see heroes. We all still see something that we want to step up to. It's the same image. It's just we go about it different because we've formed into different people because of our lives and experiences and our genders and how that forms us. But when you're at that age and that initial spark, when we all first get that idea to pursue this, it's that same thing. It delineates after that because we have to walk different paths.
And that's once you're into the field.
Yeah.
So 20-year-old.
20-year-old, I would say educate yourself. That would be.
What's the best way to do that?
Similar to what I did, and I still tell people that, even peers that are struggling with, is this the right place or am I doing this correctly? I think over my time and what I've noticed, I think people sometimes get pigeonholed of like, well, this is all I know, or this is the only place I've been. And I don't have that experience because I did so many ride-alongs. Yes, the majority of them were with Aurora because that was easy because of where I was physically living and the access to the people coming into the restaurant and having that face-to-face conversations makes it significantly easier to do a government ride-along. But again, when I started actually applying places, everywhere I applied, I did rides. And so I got experience with 5 other departments. I'd have to
Very cool.
Very specific. But
yeah.
went on rides with 5 other places at minimum and saw the law enforcement process, saw individuals, different people, different capacities, different experience.
Different morale level.
Yeah. And understood the consistencies, the inconsistencies, and then was able to have that knowledge, which equipped me that much more to actually do it myself, of the law enforcement process and industry. So if it's a 20-year-old, I would say the same thing of educate yourself in that respect, educate yourself about the industry, educate yourself about where it is that you want to work and the culture and all the nuances of that, but then also educate yourself about yourself and what it would mean for you to do this, right? Do the physical testing, go out and shoot, watch videos, have those conversations, orient yourself as best as possible, and to make sure that that's how you would adapt to that, what that would mean for you, and how that goes, and that'll help you make the best decision moving forward.
Right on.
Yeah.
So you finish up your college little experience.
Yeah, academy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was actually pretty neat because I'm actually 5 classes away from having an associate's in criminal justice through CCA. So it was pretty, even though it was an academy, it was college credits. So I need to do it. It's only been 9 years, but I need to get my associates.
It's questionable. We can go on a side tangent about college degrees and whether or not they're valuable.
Just the check.
Yeah, exactly.
5 classes is.
Do you get through the screening process of this application? But so you finish up that academy.
Yeah.
What's the application process like at this point?
So just going on to the data or the government site that we all go on and doing that research as best as possible.
Was it
the governmentjobs.com?
Governmentjobs.com.
Yeah. And it was definitely a topic of conversation. I want to say that there were between 30 and 40 people in my academy. It was definitely one of the things that we would all talk about quite a bit because there were quite a few guys that did what we call shotgunning, is we all went on those sites, right? And they just applied to the 15 departments that were open and did that shotgun blast and put all of that out there. And I wanted to avoid that behavior. I wanted to know where it was that I was going and why I was going there. So I applied to Colorado Springs PD, Parker PD, Denver was about the same time as Aurora, and then North Glen PD.
Okay.
And so since I had already familiarized myself with what a hiring process is, and that's where I got at that education phase, that's what I was doing, is I was going on to governmentjobs.com and reading the prerequisites, the minimum qualifications, the job expectations, and so I kind of knew what to expect. And so going on and filling out an electronic application, giving them the information that they wanted, which now included my post cert, and doing the education of the ride-alongs and the education of going onto their city websites. That was the other thing that I did. I had been in Aurora and Denver my whole life, but had never been to the Springs in that capacity as outside of going to the Air Force Academy or vice versa. So then did the next step of, if I'm applying here, let me educate myself about those cities as well.
Like the mission statement, what their long-term objectives are. And
the demographics, crime rates, size of the city, the outline or the city borders, like all those basic things that you don't think that you would need to know, but that's what you as a cop need to know.
Right.
Where am I going to work?
Yeah. What are the jurisdictions around me and who are we going to work with?
Yeah.
So very cool.
Yeah. So.
And the application process was pretty fluid at that point as far as the interview.
Yeah. So they were all fairly different. I found out there's definitely a pattern or consistencies, I guess. And they all essentially, most departments do the same thing, but in different order. Cause that's what most of them done for decades, and that's what works for them. But consisted of, at minimum, an oral board, some sort of written testing, from the whole gamut of North Glen was a typing test, and it was pretty funny. You had to prove how many words per minute you could type, and if you passed that, then you got to go in to do the oral board.
Interesting.
But if you didn't pass that, you didn't get to go do the oral board. Colorado Springs was actually a very traditional police exam, similar to like if you were to go to like a bookstore and get a police exam book, and they have all these variety of questions of, you're looking at a map, but you need to get from this point to this point. What's the shortest distance? It was electronic. That was the most rigorous one, and I actually wasn't prepared for that and ended up not passing because it was so nuanced, and I was not ready for that. But Parker did something kind of similar, but more of like a traditional testing booklet, kind of similar to like the when you're
SATs.
Not even that rigorous. It was more of like when you're in elementary school or middle school and you have like those basic math problems or like handwritten problems. Right. I actually tested with Parker PD twice. This is actually a pretty funny story. The first time I tested with them, they do like the traditional, like make sure you turn to these many pages. You have 20 to 30 minutes. Yeah. Don't go past this page in the booklet. Otherwise it'll be deemed cheating, yada, yada, yada. And I think it was the math section. I got done and I was like, wow, I did that really fast. Like everybody's really taking their time. I was like, I'm so proud of myself. And then that section passed and they're like, okay, now turn to this page. And I looked down at the page numbers and I had missed a page number. I hadn't actually finished the section.
Oh no.
So I like quietly stood up and went to the proctor and was like, yeah, I'm out, aren't I? Because I can't go back and do that and I'm not going to pass the test. And she was like, yeah, pretty much. And I was like, so I'm going to go and just quietly left. And she's like,
hey, I know I'm going to fail, so I'm just going to go ahead and excuse myself.
We had this kind of moment where she is, just a person in that position, hadn't been there either, and definitely had a good quiet laugh between she and I was like, that's not good, right? And she's like, no, you're good to go.
Oh man.
So we applied with them, I don't know, like 3 or 4 weeks later and actually finished the test. But
so, did you face any adversity during the application process?
Not that I picked up on. Okay. I think because it is so streamlined and so regimented that there's not much of that. I was apprehensive going through because I had been kicked out of Aurora's process. They actually disqualified me for something. So now I had that in my history packet that I had to speak to. But it was funny when I brought it up to the Northland commander in the oral board and told him what it was. And it was a minor thing, but got spun to be something. When I told him, he looked at me and goes, why are you telling me this? I was like, because I have to. Because Aurora didn't like it. And he goes, okay, I don't care. I'm like, cool. But it was definitely insightful to have that experience. This one department, I'm telling them that's the same information, but it's the lens. And I was like, that's an interesting experience of, okay, it doesn't matter. The truth doesn't matter. It's the perspective from each place.
Who's receiving it.
Right.
So that's actually good for listeners that are thinking about getting into law enforcement. Just because you get denied at one, don't give up on your dream of getting in.
Right.
Go to the other departments, do the same exact thing.
Yeah.
So interesting. So you end up finally did you get job offers from multiple places?
Northland picked me up pretty quick. And once they picked me up, I think I applied to them, I want to say end of May 2015. And I got hired by end of July 2015.
Okay, that was quick.
Yeah, they hired me pretty quick. And so I was in the processes with multiple and withdrew from those processes and went with Northland because it was the first job offer.
Did you just start immediately? Did you just go pick up equipment?
Yes and no. So they had me come in. I got hired with someone who was lateraling or moving from another agency. And because I was post-certified, even though I didn't have experience, we're in the same hiring process. So they had us come in the same day. You had to do your HR stuff because technically you're a city employee. You're not a PD employee. You work for the city. So I had to go do the city HR rigmarole of this is the OSHA standards and here's your health insurance. And
these are the benefits we're giving you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
very boring.
Yes. Yeah. But it's required because you're a city employee. Right. I think that people don't sometimes understand that there is a difference that yes, you work for the department within the city, but you are a city or a county employee. You don't have that. I think that people think, oh, I'm a police department employee. No. You work for
the city.
Yeah, you work for the government entity.
Yeah, it's like Parks and Recs. Yes. Like if you're Park and Rec, that's fine.
Right.
But you still work for the city.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So that was day one, July 27th. I still remember it. 2015. I have that etched in my mind from writing it down so many times. And then through the following days, we actually did what was called in-house training. So, orienting us to Northland in all shapes and forms. The first week was what I've called Hell Week in my mind, and that's when we learned their arrest control procedures and physical expectations. That was an interesting journey. That was definitely the first time that I was like, oh, I might have made a mistake.
Day one, day two, like when did that kick in?
Day one.
Day one?
Yeah, day one. Yeah. That was rough because the arrest control and ground tactics that they used was fairly rigorous. It was Krav Maga, which is very different from Koga.
Very different.
Yeah. And, but also the nature, looking back, I totally understood why they were as rigorous as it was, because Northland is in Adams County, and that's it's a rough county.
Yeah, it's a rough area.
Yeah. So the expectation is if you work here, you better hold your own, because either you need to save your life or someone else's at any given moment. Mm-hmm. And so you got to prove that to yourself and everybody else, because we got to depend on each other. So, yeah, that was rough. You know, it was just me and this big burly dude. He was yoked out. I hadn't done muscle or strength training. I had just been like
cardio,
doing girly cardio lifting, and, lost a bunch of weight and was eating really healthy, but hadn't tested myself strength wise and didn't think of that when I was doing that physical training. That was definitely eye opening of, I gotta step this up. And, day one, called my mom just bawling my eyes out, and went home, had bruising. I mean, from here to here, down my legs, and came home, flumped down on my couch, and I'm laying like this, just staring at the ceiling, just silently crying. Like there's no noise. It's just silently tears just streaming down my face. And
what are you thinking at this point?
Why did I do this? Or am I going to be able to do this for these people? And I wanted this so badly, but was this right? Am I going to mess this up? Mm-hmm. And scared. I was, it was terrifying, because I thought I had done all of that preparation, all that education, and then to get into, this is my first experience of like an actual department, employment and experience and training. And I was like, wow, I was not prepared. And my mom comes over, and God bless moms, because she's told me afterwards that she almost told me to quit. But she sat down and did the mom thing and said, you'll be okay. Got me ice, coached me through it, calmed me down, talked me back into going back the next day, and did the mom pep talk. But we've had many conversations where she said that she was scared, seeing how beat up I was after just training, and that she was scared as a mom. So went back. We had 2 more days, maybe 3 more days of the arrest control and ground tactics training, and just felt so defeated, because again, knowing what they were doing is they were pushing that mental piece, because of the nature of where we needed to get to work up there, and just silently cried the whole time. And I was sweating, so I was like, it's blending with the sweat, but just was so emotionally overwhelmed, and was like, I don't know how I'm actually going to do this. And then got to the end. We haven't had a scenario that we had to do, and got to the end of that, and then they all patted me on the back, told me how awesome I was, and it was like a switch, and I was like, oh, it was a test. Got it. Like it was, and I passed. I made it through, and I was like, oh no, I can do this. Got it. And went into field training at that point.
No shit.
Yeah.
So that moment where they pat you on the back.
Yeah.
Before that, did you feel like they were just trying to kick you out?
It felt very
hazing.
I don't even know if hazing would be the right way to put. I mean, it was kind of slightly hazy, but it was more bullying, I guess would be the better way to put it. Of like, or condescending, I guess. Of if you can't do this, or you can't, or if this is the way we do it, like if this is what it is. And I was like, I'm trying. I swear I'm trying. Like
this is my best hammer fist.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I can't do any more heel palms. Like, God, it was so funny.
But then you get through the scenario.
Yeah.
Lights come on.
Yeah. And then they continued with that through field training to a degree, right? Yep. But it was definitely, if you can prove that you're not going to give up through that. I mean, like, it wasn't like I performed well. Like, I didn't fight well. I didn't have a good scenario. Definitely the last part of it is where we grappled with someone, and the person that they had me grapple with was a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and they did it on purpose, and then she and I became very good friends. And I just remember like laying there and just being so exhausted, and she's like, do this. And I was like, I love you, thank you, got it. And then I would like pretend to like flump her, and she would do the thing she needed. But it definitely,
you earned your patch.
Yeah. Or showed that I could continue on in the training at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like when it comes to a uniform, you earn the uniform every single day.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, if you maintain that ideology, you're never going to let your teammates down.
Right.
And I think it's the people that lose that perspective that end up letting their teammates down, either off duty doing some stupid shit or on duty doing some stupid shit.
I agree. I think through what I've seen and conversations I've had in my own life experiences, I feel that a big part of that starts with even something like this, is that was a part of, it's a culture, it's a mindset. My time at Northland definitely had its hiccups. I'm not proud of some of the things that happened, or I definitely still take issue with some of the things that happened. But ultimately, if it came down to doing the work and being there and kicking ass and doing good cop work and being there for each other, there was never a question of that. That started with that. That started right then and there. And if you make it through all of the training and all of those paces, you earn that much more. And then as you start to do the work, it just continues, and that respect builds. So I think it's a culture and a mindset piece.
Yeah.
And then if you have that culture and that mindset, of course you're going to have the people that, even if you have that, don't key into that. And that's an individual person, in my opinion. I think that's there's no culture, there's no situation that's going to work for that individual, because that's an individual problem. And then if you don't have the culture and the mindset, then no one gets it. And then
as far as for the career itself. Yeah. Do you feel like you had more to prove when you got like on FTO?
Mm-hmm. I think in the sense that I wasn't going to wimp out, or that I wasn't going to be a pushover. I definitely got put through my paces with that too. I know I had this weird, and I've seen it in other trainees since doing it, so I can recognize it that much more and try to help them through it. I would do this weird thing where we would get a call for service, and you have your basic information and you have that initial contact, and I was always just worried about saying the wrong thing or saying too much and doing it wrong and like messing up that initial contact, and then like everything would unwind from there.
Yeah.
And then all that would happen is I would, piss off my trainer or piss off everybody around me, and it was my fault. It's the stupid trainee's fault. And once I learned that balance a little bit, kind of started finding my own pace, then it became, they told me that they thought I was too nice, or that I needed to be a little bit more aggressive. They didn't think that I was aggressive enough.
How'd that make you feel when you heard that?
Defeated. I mean, and also and frustrated, because I think they were telling me there was nothing that they could point to that I had done wrong or had gone wrong.
Specifically.
Mm-hmm. It was just this concept of them saying that you needed to be something X, Y, and Z. And I'm all about, okay, sure, give me that feedback, but then you need to tell me why you're giving me that feedback. And when we got to my last phase, they had me with another female trainer or officer who was a trainer, and there was definitely a personality clash, first of all. And that obviously never helps any situation. However, because there was this mentality that I wasn't performing in that one part that they wanted me to perform in, that became a point of contention in that training environment between her and I. And it got to the point where she did what's called an extension, where they said I needed more training. And that's the most defeating thing that a trainee can hear. And it was because I wasn't exhibiting this more aggressive behavior. And I had been proud of, and I still am proud of myself, that I was using my verbal skills and problem solving skills from my restaurant experience, and could customer service the heck out of a cop call. And there was never a time.
They call that verbal judo now.
I know. There's an actual term for it.
It's not customer service, but
in my mind, that's what I was. That's
yeah.
what I was doing, is that I was using that verbal problem solving, engaging thing, because I'd been a manager for so long. And when they're telling me I need to be more aggressive or handle things more directly or whatever, I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm not doing any of this incorrectly. They give me this extension that they want me to exhibit this behavior, while simultaneously they had told this female trainer that she needed to show me what's up and show me what to do, and then use all the times that she stepped in and interjected as me not stepping up. So it's kind of a yes. And so then,
oh boy,
yeah. So then they put me in a car, and the person they put me with, he has a special place in my heart because I was beyond defeated. I was back in that place that I had been where I was like, why did I do this? I'm not going to prove this to these people. This is what I want so bad.
You just put yourself through the fucking ringer for an entire year. It sounds like at this point.
Year and a half.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I remember day one, got in the car with him, and I'm going to cry. He has a special place in my heart because he looked at me and he said, this extension is bullshit. You don't need to be here. You're fine. Let's go to fucking work. And I was like, thank you. And then we went and did work, and he rode around with me for 2 weeks, and we just did work. It wasn't even a thing. And he's like, I've already signed off. He's like, you're good. Like, this is just, we're checking a box because someone somewhere said you needed to check a box.
Or a 2-man car for this 2 weeks.
Yeah. And it just was this, hearing that was the first thing that he said to me in a trainer-trainee capacity. And to be able to then go into those 2 weeks in that formal extension and have that knowing, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing because I'm not doing anything incorrect. And then got through that. And about 6 months later, talked to the coordinator and called him out on that, about how they use those situations where the trainer had stepped in as reasons to extend me. I said, you told this person to show me what's up and to show me what to do. She stepped in front of me, interjected these 3, 4, 5 times, and then you're now using those as reasons why I didn't do my job. But you told her to interject, and then she interjected. So how am I supposed to prove that I can do my job? And he was like,
she keeps interjecting.
Right.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, we did that wrong. I'm very sorry. And I was like, okay, cool. I'll see you later, Sarge. And walked out of his office.
At least he apologized.
Yeah. No, he owned it. I don't think that they saw it that way. I think that they were so intent on, I don't think it was malicious. I think it was just poor decision and poor articulation of things.
Right.
But it was, for me, the other person on the side of that was devastating. It was something, another hurdle that I had to go through. Taught me a lot about myself and taught me a lot about these processes, and having that humility of how to go through that. But
so you get off of FTO, you get onto your team.
Yeah.
How's that process? What's that look like? How do you feel? Is your chest held high at this point because you made it through?
To a degree, because again, the training was pretty rigorous that whole time too. Because again, still having that mentality of, push. It was a bit of a duality, because once you get out of training, you can treat the trainees like you got treated. So that was, it was definitely
right.
Like, oh God, I got my shit kicked in. Now it's your turn. Heck yeah. So, and to be a part of that though, and to be a part of, again, that mentality and that culture of, you got to prove it to be here. Right.
Sure. Yeah,
and I was excited. I was ready to go. I was ready to figure it out. I don't really remember specifically, exactly how I felt, but I just remember I don't have any adverse feelings about or memories either.
We oftentimes, the reason why I ask is we oftentimes have these goals in our mind.
Yeah.
And when we achieve these goals of becoming a certain career path or get to a certain position in our life, we often don't take time to appreciate the moment. And I'm guilty of it too.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to be a police officer. I remember swearing in, like getting through FTO and everything else like that, and then getting on my team and not even really realizing,
remembering it, that you're there now.
Yeah, I'm like,
Yeah.
like there wasn't this moment like I imagine it in the movies where it's like, oh shit, yeah, I made it. Yeah, this is it.
I think I do have some of those moments through the in-house stuff, because the in-house training was at least 3 weeks, if not 4 weeks. So we were fully integrated with the training, and so I do have those moments of like, again, that after getting through that first hell week of the ground tactics and stuff, that afterwards I definitely do remember very key moments through that of
Holy
I've
shit.
got it, and then. Yeah. The calls for service through FTO, and those moments definitely do stick out. You just mentioned swearing in. My first swearing in is a huge memory of mine that is still heart touching. I'm the first person in law enforcement in my family. My dad's military; he was in the Air Force, and so I'm the next person in our family to have worn a uniform. Mm-hmm. So at my swearing in, my mom and my dad pinned my badge, and it's the second time in my entire life I've seen my dad cry because he was up there pinning my badge. And the only other time I've seen him cry is when at his dad's funeral. Right. So that's a key moment of like, oh, I did this and my family's here with this.
And they're so
and
proud
they're
of
seeing
you.
it.
Yeah.
So I do have those moments. And then, but as far as like just getting to the work at that point, because when you train in those departments where you're just go, even through training, once you get out, you're still just working.
Going.
Because it's just work.
It doesn't stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
The screen never stops. There's always a call waiting for you.
Unless there's a blizzard. Yeah.
And then it's accident.
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess I want to get into kind of that transition from there to where you are now.
Yeah.
One key point I want to hit, we'll get to, I just want to make sure we don't gloss over it, is the birth of your child.
Yeah.
And how that influenced perception, perspectives, and everything else like that.
Yeah.
But from this point, where did you go? Because I don't want to say nobody's truly disgruntled, but the career changes people.
Yeah.
Fundamentally.
Yeah.
So where did you go from that point to where you are now?
So I worked at Northland for
we can leave current agencies out and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I don't mind saying Northland because it was a good time in my life. And
I've heard great things about that department.
Yeah.
I just wish it wasn't so far away.
I know. Yeah. They're kind of going through a weird time right now, I've heard.
Sure.
And my name is out there and other things tied to them. So it's no secret that I've worked there. So I worked at Northland until March of 2019. Through that time, there were some decisions that I needed to make. There was some stuff going on in the department that was questionable. And then for me personally as well, made a decision to move in my career. I've thought about it a lot, about why I made that decision when I made it. And I don't know if it was the most clear-headed decision. And it really wasn't anything to do with the career. I wish I'd taken some more time and given myself a little bit more time with that decision. Because, you mentioned disgruntled and changed and all of those things. And I definitely had once I left Northland, I definitely had some shifts in personality that I hadn't quite known how extreme they had gotten, because you're hypervigilant all the time. And being able to step out of that high pressure work environment because of the nature of the work was eye-opening, but I didn't feel any lasting effects from that I couldn't have addressed at that time. So I made the decision to move to another department. Needed to make a quick change because of the personal stuff going on. So didn't do the process that I had done the first time around, didn't do the research, didn't do the vetting that I should have done. I felt at that point, having done that already and being in law enforcement, I was like, a job's a job. I'm going to figure this out. And a job is not a job. A department is not a department. And I know that now.
It's not the same everywhere.
Yeah. So again, back to that question you asked me about the 20-year-old. That's why I'm like, educate yourself.
Yeah.
So got hired fairly quickly. I think I got hired within 3 or 4 weeks through that process. So that was
quitting the Northland.
Mm-hmm. Or applying and then getting the official letters to being able to resign and make that switch. I finished out my time at Northland. Friday and Saturday, because I worked Wednesday through Saturday there. Friday and Saturday, I was acting supervisor. Those were my last 2 shifts because my sergeant was out of town.
And you were most senior?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah.
Did you get paid sergeant pay?
No.
Oh, man.
Yeah. But yeah, I was acting sergeant on Friday and Saturday, turned in my stuff Sunday morning, and reported the following Wednesday at my current agency. So quick turnaround.
Here's one uniform and I'll put on another.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
And fairly quickly learned that I should have vetted a little bit more. Felt secure in my job in that sense, because with any government job, you're fairly secure when it comes to benefits and pay and position and those things. Definitely a big culture and system shock from what I had known.
Care to elaborate? The FTO process, lateral process.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of where to start, because when I say culture and system shock, it was 100% that I was struggling with. I mean, it was the culture of the department, the nature of the work, the interactions with peers, the interactions with citizens, the expectations of citizens,
because at this point you're walking over to the new agency with how many years of experience?
Almost 4.
So 4 years of experience at a very high pace,
high crime. Yeah.
True calls for service.
Yeah.
Where, people are getting robbed, stabbed. Domestics are
Life
true domestics.
or death, yes. Yeah. I was doing life or death investigations on a daily basis.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then you jump over to the current agency.
And and that's again where I should have vetted and I should have come down and seen
what it's like.
Yeah. And taking that information in of what is a typical shift? What is a call for service load? I actually, timing was so quick, and because I was working, I had planned to do a ride along with the place that I had applied to, and I ended up having it scheduled for the day that they had me come sign my offer letter. And so I literally signed my offer letter and went down to briefing to go on my ride along. And I'm riding around on that day, and I was like, oh no. I don't know about this. And I'm also someone who follows through with their commitments. And so I was, give it a try, write it out. You do have that back knowledge. You do have that experience. See what you can make of this. And the first day I reported was interesting because I, again, coming from my experience of reporting for duty, kind of that paramilitary, like Northland was very traditional in that way, and the other agencies I had rode with were in that way. I reported, quote unquote, to in-service day. ACT was my first day working at my current department. And so I'm thrown into a training environment, which of course I'm familiar with, but I'm not formally reporting for duty for my post. I'm reporting for in-service. And had, the uncomfortable experience of I'm surrounded by strangers. No one knows who I am. No one knows why I'm here. I don't have any cushion of this is a trainee. It's a stranger doing ACT training with us. And then just through the training process, could see, again, going through the calls that were coming in and then working through how I knew to handle those calls for service. Of course, it was a different approach. It wasn't necessarily I wasn't having to work as high paced, but it was definitely still going through the same methods and approach and investigatory processes.
Right.
And was frequently questioned in the sense of not understanding the mythology behind those things or why that would be so regimented, and was very taken aback that I was so well versed in criminal procedure and not having that same interaction with others. It was more of a generalized understanding, whereas I was coming from a place where I had done, again, beginning to end, high profile, high level felony filings and full investigations, and so understood all of those steps. And then coming down here doing lower level crime investigations and having someone question those processes, it was kind of a,
what are you doing here?
Why? It was very, again, that system shock of, but I know what I'm doing. Like, why is this even? How is this that this is what this experience is? It was very eye opening.
Yeah. And this is just a side tangent. My experience with it was pretty much just teach me how to do the report writing. Mm-hmm. I'm like, like you said, investigations are investigations. It doesn't matter where you go.
Right, because a criminal procedure is the criminal procedure.
Right.
Yeah.
What happened? Who did it?
Right.
Did they intend to do it?
Right.
To boil it down to 3 things.
Right. What was their intent and why did they, how did it happen?
Yep.
Yeah. And who was it?
So as you're going you have that culture shock.
Yeah.
You say, I'm going to stick this out. I'm going to see how this changes.
Right.
You get through FTO, right?
Yeah.
Did you get extended?
No, not here.
Okay.
God, I'd be pissed.
I would be going back.
Yeah, I'd be very angry.
So you get through FTO.
Yeah.
And then when you're looking at, when you get placed in your teams,
mm-hmm.
did you feel as though you need to prove yourself when you got to the teams?
No, not in the same way that I had to before.
Okay.
My prior experience, everyone had to prove themselves because, again, the nature of the work, everyone had to prove themselves they needed to be there. And I definitely felt the additional pressure of being a woman in that environment. So, in Northland definitely had that of, I'm not the weak link and I'm going to prove you that I'm not the weak link, but it wasn't ever said or even implied. It just was more of a part of that mindset, right? That like it's because it's when you work in those places where you have that high crime level, the contacts are looking at the women as with the weak link. And so you
mean the people on,
yes,
like at the call?
Yeah. The citizens or the people that are on the calls for service, not my peers. And so in a positive way, we kind of all stepped it up that much more. Like, so we did a lot of networking and talking and not even, it was looking back, it was fairly subliminal or subconscious. Honestly, it wasn't ever really anything that we talked about. Like, how do you as a woman go onto a scene and command it? It was, oh, I liked how you said that. That was really cool. I'm going to try that next time. So it was,
this was at Northland.
Yes. So it was more collaborative.
Right.
So when I got to my current agency, the training that I had, I actually ended up being placed on the team where I had done 2 of my phases of training. So I knew the people I was working with already, to include the supervisors, who were fantastic. They're still very important to me, and I had to have great working relationships with those individuals, because they were so supportive and welcoming through me showing up and having the knowledge and experience that I did. They in their own rights were very receptive of that. I think it was more finding my place in this new environment that I felt challenged in, of where do I fit into this now? Because I didn't have the same physicality, the same mental state, didn't the same approach. And so it was more of me trying to take me and fit it into some box that already existed for me.
Do you watch Instagram a lot?
No, like, I don't have Instagram.
TikTok?
No. I don't have really either of those.
There's an account called Mandatory Fun Day.
Yeah.
And it's a military, I think he's a first lieutenant or something like that. But
yeah.
Anyway, he explains going to a new unit. And I think he explains it pretty well. He says, going to a new unit's like starting an episode or starting a new season or a show, but they're on season 5.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is definitely the finale of this show. And it's not.
Right.
It's not the finale. Shit gets weirder next season.
Right.
And it's like the way he explained it, I was like, yeah, it's like going to a new team.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I from what you're saying, I've experienced that too when I've gone to new teams.
Right.
In the sense of like, you do see like a place that needs to be filled. And you're like, how can I mold myself to?
Well, it's more like, you have to fit in, I guess, is a better.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to work here. This is.
I got to get along with these people.
Right. I've got to do this job, and part of that is finding how do you fit in and how do you and it's in like the smaller portion of like your immediate people you work with, and then in the bigger scheme of things, right, in the department as a whole, what is it that you're accomplishing? What is it that you're contributing? How do you fit into this big scheme?
Do you feel like it's harder as a female to find your niche in groups? Perceptually, it doesn't have to be actually.
I think it's, I'm trying to think of the best way to explain it. It's more as time has gone on and having the 2 experiences, and now initially, no, again, the best way I can explain it. That's why I was like, how can I explain this? Initially, no, I didn't think that was, for me, was something that I had to navigate. It kind of just was inherent initially. However, as time has passed, it's again goes back to that culture piece for me, is that part of a culture of a department, because it is a male dominated industry, is where do our females fit in? where do we, and that's what I was pushing up against looking back is
the new place.
Is I was rubbing up against, I know me, I know how I cop, not only an idea like of law enforcement that we all would have to transition through, but I also, looking back, was rubbing up against this schema, mindset, preconceived notion that was already well established of what a woman at our current department should be and is and in their place and how they work within here.
And meanwhile, you have 4 years of experience at a much higher paced agency that you're coming in with, and you know how you police works. And
also, again, all that prior knowledge I had too, all those other departments, right? It wasn't, I was that educated piece. If I had done the law enforcement research of how law enforcement works, how an officer at all these different departments does that same job, right? Because again, criminal process is criminal process.
Right.
And so coming out of the experience I had, yes, I had that to a degree, but it was more the culture of like, we all had to figure that out, right? And we all had our own nuances of that. And then coming to where I moved to, again, over time, it has become, I was forcing myself into this schema that I was never going to fit into, but it just imploded from there.
So moving through, you had your son 3 years ago?
Yeah.
So 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So cute.
Yeah. He knows.
So
he's very aware.
So you're working patrol at this point?
Yes.
I'm assuming light duty towards the end of pregnancy.
Yeah, well, he was a ninja baby. We didn't know that he was in there. So,
whoa.
Yeah. You haven't heard this story?
I have not. Please, if you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah, no, I'm comfortable sharing. Yeah. So, we didn't know, I think it was either 20 weeks or 22 weeks when we finally found out that I was pregnant. I have PCOS, so I don't have, you know what PCOS is?
Not a clue.
Polycystic ovarian syndrome. So it has a bunch of different side effects. And so one of those is you get cysts on your ovaries and it keeps you from having regular menstruation cycles. And so when I wasn't having normal lady things, I was like,
it's par for the course.
My PCOS is acting up because I've had this since I was 13. Cool. And then all the physiological changes that happen, looking back, it's like, yeah, you dummy. And then got to about that 20-week mark, and the belly was kind of, that's not fat. There's something.
That's a little bit more firm.
There's something different. Took a test, and yeah, we were pregnant. To be fair, when we conceived, we thought, we were like, what if? Took 5 tests, had 4 negatives, 1 positive at that time. And so we had no idea. He just was a little ninja baby. So at that point.
So 20 weeks.
Yeah. So
you're like, ooh, I need to go on light duty.
Yeah. So at that point I walked into briefing that night and went to my sergeant. Lieutenant was like, yeah, no, I need to be off the road because don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
With him. So
of course. It's I have a friend in Idaho, and she worked, I think, until she was 25 weeks pregnant on the road.
God bless her.
And she knew.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how could you mentally I freak out for my own life in certain calls, like, let alone.
Well, I think that is an interesting piece, again, through learning all of these nuances, right? There's, and we don't need to pull at this string because that's a whole other world, but the reproductive and maternity care in this country is
trash.
Right. So the fact that there's no standards in any industry for when a woman should be protected during the gestation period, but in the industries like ours and other first responders or the military, there's no precedent for when an individual shouldn't be in an enforcement capacity.
I will say the military does, from my experience, does a phenomenal job. There is no regulation. Okay. There is in the military. I'm talking about no
on the civilian side.
Federal regulation for civilians.
Okay.
But yeah, it's interesting because you talk to different people at different departments and they're like, oh yeah, I had to work until I was like 14 weeks.
Right. And because there's no standard for it. And so
and
they had this
weird.
Yeah. So that's kind of where the being a woman, dealing with a woman situation and having to go talk to male superiors, they're like, oh, well, it's up to you and your doctor. I'm like, you can talk, you don't have it. I'm not
contagious.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not gonna like break down. Like, it's like, it was just a weird shift in like the guy icky thing, demeanor change. And it wasn't, again, I know it wasn't malicious, it wasn't targeted, but it was almost immediate of even talking about the circumstances of those things, that there was this different interaction tone that I started to receive. But it's fascinating. Yeah, there's no, and it's not even covered in most policies. It's not the government, the agencies that we work for, so like the cities, the HRs, all of those things, they don't cover it either. It's not considered as like, this is a norm that needs to be set, or a standard that needs to be set of between this time frame and this time frame, you need to start talking to your doctor about when this is not safe for you or the child. It's kind of just up in the air.
Well, and again, it's like, if you're driving a vehicle around, it just takes one person blowing a red light.
Mm-hmm.
And like, if it's just me, I get it. That's a risk of the job.
Yeah.
But if it's me and a child,
right,
not cool. Alive, like born or unborn.
Yeah.
Not cool. So you go on FMLA, or you go on leave, light duty.
Yeah. I went on modified, so I was working in the office.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have your child. When do you go back? How soon after?
Oh, that's another. So he was born in February.
Right.
And so, again, because there's no maternity or paternity protection in the state or the country, I could only use FMLA time.
Which is 3 months.
Mm-hmm. So up to 12 weeks. So I elected to do 10 solid weeks. I wanted to save a couple, because I was like, what if, right? And there was that new parent, I don't know how this works. What if I do need that time type thing? So I elected to take 10 weeks off and was back on the road. So mid-April at that point. So medically speaking, that was the craziest decision or situation to be essentially forced into.
Because, to go back to work.
Yeah. I mean, if you do any research or have any knowledge of what internally happens to a woman's body when they grow a child, we're not physically sound to be put in those positions.
No. You're not really in a position to fight.
Right. Well, I mean,
depending on if you get a cesarean and this is just knowledge from Kaylee being in labor and delivery.
Sure.
Right. But, yeah, it's alarming to me, not only the physiological responses of pregnancy, but the hormonal changes.
Oh yeah. I was nuts.
Right.
I mean, you don't have, no parent has time to address themselves during that time frame. So then to think, I mean, even in this podcast, let's talk, I mean, look at how much talk I did about preparing to go to the road for the first time. Right. And if we wanted to talk about it even more, even thinking about when I moved departments and needed to go through an FTO process. Yeah, I didn't vet it really, but I still was doing mental preparation. I still was being methodical. And imagine trying to prepare for a new job or prepare to go do a job when you have a newborn. And I didn't turn my uniform on until the day before I had to go to the road because I was so uncomfortable, physical. I mean, I gained, because I didn't know I was pregnant. It was also COVID, right, that year. So no one could work out regularly. And so the weight gain that I went through, I had never thought that I would have that much weight gain as a woman, because we all think about those things. Mm-hmm. So I was grappling with that. Tried on my uniform, devastated how I felt. Because again, the uniform is that symbol piece that we all carry. And so this symbol at that point that I'd been carrying for years is eviscerated, and was able to find a uniform I could wear, but went to put my belt on, and I'm getting things ready, getting my car loaded, and I'm walking past some coworkers, and my belt popped. and my mags go flying off in front of a couple of my coworkers that I haven't seen for weeks. And that's one of my first interactions. And the whole dynamic of that. And of course they were friends. And so they didn't say anything. They asked if I was okay and kind of had a laugh, but the symbolism of what that was, and then had to go talk to our uniform person and go through the process of trying to put a new belt together so that I could put a belt on. And again, all of those symbols of what that is, postpartum. Like,
right.
So that was an interesting day.
Yeah. And this is it. I feel like the FOP were some legislative branch for law enforcement. I say the FOP because they do so much on the national level.
Right. They're in that world already. Yeah.
I feel like that's something they should pick up.
And that's crossed my mind of trying to start that conversation of how does this get fixed? Because this is a huge oversight.
Yeah.
And
how much do you know what the percentage of women in law enforcement is across the nation, percentage wise?
Not off the top of my head, but we could find it.
Yeah, I'll just Google it real quick.
We'll go to the 30 by 30 initiative. So do you know what the 30 by 30 initiative is?
No, go ahead and talk about it.
So they are a nonprofit initiative who is working to have law enforcement departments across the United States pledge to have 30% women in policing by 2030. And so they're working on that across the nation.
And do you think that I'll read into it, but anecdotally, why do you think that is? Is there a barrier to entry? Is there that implicit bias of hiring people they assimilate with?
Mm-hmm. I think it's multiple factors. Looking at my experience, I wasn't that 8-year-old who was like, I want to be a cop. It was, I had always in my life thought, oh, if I could do that was what I told was my girl voice was, wow, if I could do anything, maybe I would try to figure that out. Not, I'm going to do that. And so I think that we have girls are raised to be girls, to sit back and to have that, this is your niche, right? You be nice to people, you do nice things. And law enforcement, fire, military is societally talked about more of those high risk things. We send our men to those things. And so not that I was
perpetuated by like the damsel in distress.
Yeah. Or
the
like
Disney movies and stuff like that.
Don't knock Disney movies.
I'm not knocking Disney movies. I like them. I think they're empowering women a lot in these new ones.
Yeah.
I think they're trying to right the wrong, not wrong.
Of the stereotype.
Yeah. They're trying to correct the stereotype or provide a new outlook.
Yeah.
Not to say like if I commend women that are stay-at-home moms.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. That, they're heroes too.
Rock it.
If I could be a stay-at-home mom, sign me up, man.
Right. I tell Kaylee all the time. She's not a stay-at-home mom. She works weekends most of the time, but like she has a harder fucking job than I do.
Yeah.
Like raising these kids.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So not to hate on the people that choose to be the the Southern belle of like I'm all sweet and stuff.
Well, there's a difference between trying to fulfill some persona of a stay-at-home mom and like being a stay-at-home mom. There's two. There's the Instagram stay-at-home mom, and then there's a stay-at-home mom.
They have everything together.
Yeah, there's a mom who's momming her ass off, and then there's Instagram moms.
All I'm saying is it takes all types.
Yeah.
So, but I think Disney's doing a great job with kind of providing those Judy Hopps and Rhea and those.
I gotta let you know that if you brought Disney up, so if we're gonna go on a Disney tangent, this podcast is going to take a very different turn.
So we'll go back to the 30 by 30.
Because Disney's my jam. I think you'd know that. That's So we're going to take a very different
pivot back to 30 by 30. So it says the underrepresentation of women in policing undermines public safety. I would agree with that. And this just comes from my time in the military. And the interesting thing about the military, you can't fire people. It's very hard to fire people in the military.
Yeah.
You have to learn where they fit.
Yeah.
And that's not to say, oh, you fit here. It's you tell me and show me what you're interested in and show me your skills and ability. I can't get rid of you. No. I've got to add you to this team and find where you bring value.
Right.
And that's not like went to a leadership course and this kind of side tangent, but this guy did explain it pretty well. Sometimes there's a duck. Sometimes there's an eagle. Sometimes the duck wants to be an eagle. So you can send that duck to eagle school. But at the end of the day, is it still a duck?
Is this the military version of the ugly duckling?
No, this was actually
the ugly duckling becomes a swan. So like ducks and
oh yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I never never connected that, but you know what I mean. It's like, but that duck still has value,
right?
That duck,
the duck's got
can
a duck.
do, and the eagle can't do duck shit, right. So you got to have both,
right?
In an organization. That's not to say men or women are either one, but it says currently women make up only 12% of sworn officers and 3% of police leadership in the United States. Mm-hmm. So there you have it.
Yeah. I'm not surprised.
I'm not surprised either.
Yeah. And I know it's because, again, women, girls are raised to be girls. There's not this dynamic conversation. I know that there's a lot of conversation out there right now about how do you be a strong woman without being the stereotypical bitch or like over the top or whatever. It's not about
that's an interesting label in itself.
Right.
And I'm not saying I'm like a women's rights advocate or anything like that. I just like hearing perspectives.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's a label.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're standing up for you're standing up for yourself. Oh, you must be a bitch.
Oh, people think I'm a bitch all the time.
And it's like, no, I'm just setting boundaries.
I'm just me. Like it's okay. I just don't feel like dealing with you.
Right.
Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting though. It's an interesting, like, it was brought up to me because it's simple things we say all the time, like, oh, stop being a bitch. Mm-hmm. Like to men. Right. Right.
Oh, it's derogatory. So stop being a bitch. Stop being a pussy.
Right. Yeah. Stop being a wimp. Stop being a girl.
Yeah.
Like,
so there's a very interesting video that I saw years ago, where they got whole range of people, men, women, races, ages, everything. And they said, run like a girl, throw like a girl, dance like a girl, jump like a girl. And they do the dipsy things. And then they say, okay, how do you throw? And they all threw normal. They all ran normal. So there's this connotation of
across the spectrum.
Mm-hmm, they all did the same little thing when they said, do it like a girl. And then they said, okay, now throw the ball. And then they threw the ball. They danced, they jumped, they did normal actions. Yeah. But when there's this do it like a girl, it's this weird.
Yeah, it's an adjective. Adjective before or an adverb most of the time.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting. And as a hashtag soon to be girl dad in
Love
July,
it.
I'm trying to empower. I'm trying to change because I'm not going to lie. Like you were raised in this culture. I was raised in this culture.
And it's not intentional either.
It's not. It's completely. Right. But it's catching myself now, so I want my daughter to be Judy Hopps to have that desire.
Oh, yeah.
I would hope
you just
to
gave
God,
me chills. Like I was like, heck
hope
yeah.
to God she doesn't go into law enforcement.
I know, right?
But
can she be? Let's pick another one. She can be Raya. Let's have her be Raya.
I'd rather me turn into stone, but that's just my thing.
But she saves you.
Yeah, eventually.
Took 10 years, but it's okay.
You know what I mean, though. Like I want like an astronaut. We'll go with astronaut, right? Yeah. Like. There are women astronauts, so there are people out there. But it's the same thing. But it's the same thing.
Yes.
And it's like I don't want her to feel like she has to become a nurse, right?
Yeah.
I don't want her to feel like she has to become a teacher or like these female-dominated professions, right? Mm-hmm. I don't want her to feel like if she chooses that, cool. But I don't want it to be because of me.
Sure. Well, and it's not even so much that it'll be because of you as a parent, because you as a parent, your responsibility is to help that girl navigate through the world and to keep her safe. And I think that, or I know that's where the conversation now is again, we're taught as women to be polite, but if you really look at it, being polite is what gets people hurt. Yep. Because, you cross paths with the creepy person, you cross paths with the guy following you and oh, I'm going to give him benefit of the doubt because maybe he didn't mean it. I don't want him to get mad. Fuck politeness. Like, get away from me. I don't want you near me. I don't want you in my space. We're not friendly. Stop. Yep. You're saying the same thing other than, please, can you go away? I don't want you in my space. Yep. It's the same thing. But if you do the first one, you're a bitch. You're mean. And so I've been in that position many a time, going out with my friends downtown in my early 20s. I was very much that person of like, back up. And they're like, you should smile more. Right.
Countless.
Right. because, you know, when we're girls going out and one of us is more drunk than the other, and she's not perceptive of the creepy things, and
you got to watch out for her.
Right. I'm the one that's going to get in your face and be like, back up off of her.
Yeah.
And then we have to leave the bar because I don't want to get hurt. But
bar fight.
Yeah. But, and that was before I was a cop. So like I didn't have the skill set at that point to try.
You didn't know how to hammer fist.
I didn't have those heel palms yet. I mean, I had the stilettos, but I didn't have the heel palms.
Yeah. It's going back to the, you know, the FOP doing more stuff. 13% is 13%. Mm-hmm. I think that's what the percent was.
I think it was 12.
12.
Mm-hmm.
Wow,
12 and 3. Yeah.
Still, it's still a substantial amount of law enforcement females.
Yeah.
Across the country.
Yeah.
And that's not to diminish, like, men go through, even though they say they don't go through shit when they have a kid, they go through some shit.
No, 100%.
Like, postpartum depression is very real.
Oh, there's
in
grieving.
Men.
There's grieving for men too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And it's that's something I don't want to gloss over, and I'll probably have another not to say you can't provide perspective, but I'll have another male law enforcement officer on to talk about that shit, because it's.
I mean, I can talk about it in what Colton had to go through.
Yeah, yeah.
So my husband is also in law enforcement.
He's also on the podcast.
Yeah, it's Colton. Yeah. Handsome dude.
Very handsome.
Yeah.
Beautiful head of hair.
I know. Yeah. It's actually kind of scary how fast it grows. So we actually also work at the same department. So it was a unique experience for us in both of those respects, both being in law enforcement and the same department.
Right.
And watching again, like I spoke to, I had to go back to the road with a newborn and doing all those things. And so did he. And so that was a very big part of our conversations that we were having too, of me pushing him of the check-ins of like, are you okay? And he'd be like, yep, I'm fine. And I'm like, let's try that again. Because I think for men, they fall into that. Well, I have to be fine because that's your guys' stereotype. You have to fall into that I'm man, I am okay. And
keep talking. I'm just
Googling. And so I think I pushed him really hard, and also for us too, just because of our timeline of how quick things had to change, because we didn't know and had to do quick preparation. We were both grieving, losing our previous life and previous identity, and had to push him to say, you're mad because you want to go do X, Y, and Z, and you can't,
right?
Because I need you, or the kid needs you, and you can tell me right now I'm pissed off because I can't go do that.
And that's fine.
Right.
It's that is okay to feel that way.
Right.
I was just looking up fine meaning because somebody brought it up before. Feelings inside, not expressed. And so like when I hear people say, "Oh, I'm fine," I'm like, there's something in there you're not expressing.
Use more words.
Yeah. So, it's interesting.
The
whole aspect of like family life, and this is what bothers me, is I do feel like there's a shift in wellness programs and stuff. But when you look at the family unit,
it's still disregarded completely.
Yeah. Like, oh, we have family day. Bring your kid to work day.
Right.
Well, how? Well, I don't have an office job.
Right.
Like,
and the time frame that we had our kiddo, a lot of people at our department had kids too.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to see. There was a couple of us women that had kiddos at about the same time, but there was more guys that had kiddos at the same time. And they were going through that too, of, I don't want to be here. I'm tired. I miss my kid. And not having the flexibility of, mom's exhausted, kiddo was a little bit sick, I needed to take tonight off, but my sergeant was pissed at me for trying to ask. That's not fair to the dad either. And so I think that's where, again, there's no grace in that. Of like, he's also a new parent. He's also going through it too. And it was very disheartening to see. Colt didn't necessarily have that exact experience of those denials, but definitely had that rubbing up against, again, that responsibility piece, and then the pushback from
the system,
from the department and the system of what's expected of you, without the grace of, but you're also a new parent.
Yeah.
And I think that's something, a big shift that needs to happen in the industry as a whole for both men and women, of, we're not going to make those sacrifices anymore. We're not going to knuckle under and say, screw it. I'm going to stay late every day like I used to. No, I'm going to go home on time because I have somewhere to be.
I have responsibilities.
Right. And you're not going to hold that against me.
And this is kind of going back to like how you felt after your FTO phase, right? Is like, oh, I'm finally out of the shit. Now I can give them shit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So these sergeants and lieutenants that went through that shit, they had kids. Like most of them had kids.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Most of them had kids while in law enforcement. So they've been through it.
Yeah.
Whether or not they block it out or they just have that perception of like, well, fuck it, I made it. They can make it too.
Well, I think that's what they were forced to do.
Right.
So that's perpetuated.
But they're just because it's the way it's been done doesn't mean it.
No,
needs to be
100%.
continued.
No, that's what I mean. Like there needs to be a mental shift in it,
Yeah.
is of recognizing.
But I don't think there will be, because there's no benefit to the agencies. This is broad spectrum.
Yeah.
There is zero benefit for the agencies to afford that to the worker.
Yeah.
They lose a worker when someone has a kid to begin with because of FMLA. And Obama made it federally required to give at least, 15 weeks or something like that? 12 weeks. So Obama federally made that a requirement across the board. And I know agencies are already pissed about that you can use that. I know when I was in Durham, props to Durham, like they paid like shit, but they gave me 3 months paid as a father.
Yeah.
And I needed it.
Yeah.
I probably needed longer, and I should have probably checked out mental health wise because I wasn't prepared to go back.
Yeah.
Like at all.
Yeah.
And there was a perceptive in my team. My team knew that. My team knew because we were getting it was probably like North Glen, very high pace, foot chases, car chases.
Yeah, you got to be on.
Getting shot at, things like that, and it changed. When I had a kid, I was like, I don't really care to chase this guy anymore
I don't want to run at that anymore.
Right. I know he has a gun. Like I saw it.
Yeah.
Like I'm not like I'll just set up a perimeter. Yep. Whereas before I would chase him and I would tackle him or, at least keep eyes on him.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's an interesting perspective, and I wanted to get your input on how that changed. It's interesting that you bring up the physiological stuff because I think females are forced to feel, well, I think body dysmorphia is across the board.
Yeah. I
Male
hate
and
looking in
females.
the mirror.
Yeah, I think, and I think for most officers they do.
Yeah.
I think that is like a commonality that we also all don't talk about is the body dysmorphia.
Yeah. Well, our generation as a whole, growing up from not having digital access to like having to figure that out, and the pressures of
MySpace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't allowed to have MySpace. My mom wouldn't let me.
That's probably a good move.
I know. But I definitely got a Facebook in my early 20s. And so I just think that that's, as a whole, our generation is screwed. But then, yes, there are certain components of different sects of that, of like our industries or anything like that. I just think certain things are perpetuated worse.
I just think this job does so much to us.
Yeah.
Like stress wise, cortisol levels are through the roof. So you're going to gain weight. Yeah. Period. Yeah. Like, unless you are genetically gifted and have a metabolism like a rabbit. Yeah. But, and I think it's when you came back to work and that happened, what carried you through that time?
My personal sense of obligation that I have always had of commitment. That's why, I stayed at my restaurant job for so long. That's just a personality trait of I've made this commitment, and because of the commitment that is law enforcement, that was that much higher of a personal keyed in to that. The obligation of needing an income for, family and financial stability. And then the commitment to myself that I had made, and that we all make when we get into these kind of jobs, is that I did all that work. I did all that legwork. I can't, that's in there somewhere. And holding on to that or remembering that's why I was still there. Not that it was actively felt or anything, but that was definitely playing out in the back of my mind at some points.
So what's the future look like?
That's a tough question right now. After my son was born and the experiences that I had for the first 2.5 years of his life, personally, and the chemical changes that I went through, mental changes I went through, and work environment experiences that came crashing in together and culminated in a lot of stuff. I am definitely at a crossroads in my life and career, and doing a lot of work and introspection and therapy and things on trying to figure out from applying to Aurora PD to Northland PD to the shift to kiddo, what all of that means and come out healthier And all of the things that we talked about, the symbolism, what law enforcement stands for, all of those things, where do I fit into that now, and where does it fit into me now? And it's a lot.
Well, right on.
Yeah.
We'll wrap it up there.
Sure.
It's a good point to mic drop. Lindsey, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Bye, guys.